Tobey Maguire, a man forged in hunger, hardship, and the cold indifference of circumstance. Behind those soulful eyes that captured hearts as Spider-Man lies a story not of glamorous Hollywood ascent, but of brutal survival. This is the tale of a boy who slept on strangers' couches, who watched his father hauled away for robbing a bank, who climbed from nothing to swing across Manhattan's skyline. He became one of the highest-paid actors of the 2000s, earning $17.5 million for Spider-Man 2. He built an empire worth $75 million. Yet the ghosts of poverty never left him, and the price of his crown was written in damaged vertebrae, shattered relationships, and a reputation forever caught between hero and villain. Before we begin, if Spider-Man ever made you believe an ordinary person could be extraordinary, leave a like as tribute to the boy who crawled through hell to wear that mask. Behind the thunder of global fame lies a cruel truth. Tobey Maguire's first stage was not lit with dazzling spotlights, but with the harsh, fluorescent glow of welfare offices and homeless shelters. Born June 27, 1975, in Santa Monica, California, to teenage parents barely older than children themselves. His mother, Wendy, was 18, his father, Vincent, just 20. They married after his birth, but divorced when Tobey turned 3. What followed were years of nomadic existence, bouncing between relatives' homes like an unwanted package. He slept on couches that smelled of other people's lives, in living rooms where he was tolerated, but never truly wanted. When relatives grew tired, his mother would take him to homeless shelters. The family survived on food stamps and government medical insurance, accepting groceries from neighbors. Tobey learned early that love was conditional security, an illusion. He would later confess, "I realized at a young age that I was responsible for myself. My feelings of love or security or happiness, they were all in my own hands." This was not wisdom, this was the brutal education of neglect. From neglect, he carved resolve. From rejection, he learned defiance. But the deepest wound was yet to come. In 1993, just as Tobey's career was beginning to flicker with the faint promise of success, his father, Vincent Maguire, committed an act of desperation that would scar them both forever. Vincent's sister, Teresa, had died of cancer, leaving him with her 2 young children to raise in addition to the financial wreckage of his own life. A cook and construction worker barely scraping by, Vincent found himself drowning in obligations he could not meet. So one day, in a moment of sheer panic and stupidity, he walked across the street to the bank, opposite his home in Reseda, California, presented the teller with a note demanding money, indicated he had a weapon, and made off with the cash on foot in broad daylight without even wearing a mask. It was the most incompetent bank robbery imaginable, the act of a man who had stopped thinking and was simply reacting to the crushing weight of poverty. A neighbor spotted him running with the loot under his arm and called the police. Vincent Maguire was arrested, convicted, and sentenced to prison. The news hit the tabloids with cruel irony. Spider-Man's dad is a bank robber. They screamed, and Tobey, who had just begun to taste the sweetness of recognition, was forced to swallow the bitter humiliation of his father's crime. Years later, sources close to the family would explain that Tobey never blamed his father, that he understood Vincent had been pushed to the breaking point, that the robbery was a rash decision that cost him dearly. But understanding does not erase shame. Understanding does not heal the wound of seeing your father reduced to a criminal, of knowing that the poverty you barely escaped had destroyed the man who gave you life. Tobey rarely spoke of his childhood after this, burying the trauma beneath layers of professional achievement, but it was always there, lurking in the shadows of his careful public image. Armed with nothing but stubborn will and bruises of rejection, Tobey Maguire began his assault on Hollywood at 14 in 1989. His mother, Wendy, pushed him toward acting. When Tobey wanted to enroll in home economics in 6th grade, dreaming of becoming a chef like his father, Wendy offered him $100 to take drama instead. It was the best investment she ever made. Tobey dropped out of high school after constant relocations took their emotional toll pursuing acting full-time. He appeared in commercials, guest spots on television shows like Walker, Texas Ranger and Roseanne. The work was inconsistent, the pay meager. But Tobey possessed quiet intensity that suggested depths beneath his boyish surface. His friendship with Leonardo DiCaprio, forged during auditions where they competed for the same roles, became both lifeline and challenge. DiCaprio landed the lead in This Boy's Life. In 1993, Maguire got a supporting role. The pattern repeated. But as DiCaprio's star rose with Titanic, Maguire remained in shadows, working steadily but never breaking through. His big break came with Ang Lee's The Ice Storm in 1997. This led to Pleasantville in 98, then The Cider House Rules in 99, which earned an Oscar nomination. Tobey was ascending but still not a star. The industry saw him as reliable but not bankable. Then came 2002, the year that changed everything. Sam Raimi offered him the role of Peter Parker in Spider-Man, a gamble that would either launch Tobey into the stratosphere or bury him in the wreckage of a failed blockbuster. Tobey accepted not just because he loved the character, but because he understood what his impoverished childhood had taught him. This was the path to financial security, to never sleeping on someone else's couch again, to finally, truly, escaping. He trained relentlessly, bulking up his slender frame, learning the physicality of a superhero while maintaining the vulnerability that made Peter Parker human. When Spider-Man premiered, it shattered box office records, earning $820 million worldwide and becoming one of only 4 films at the time to cross $400 million domestically. Tobey Maguire had arrived, but the cost of arrival was only beginning to reveal itself. By 2004, Tobey Maguire was no longer the hungry kid from Santa Monica begging for scraps. He was a global phenomenon, the face of a franchise that had redefined superhero cinema and minted hundreds of millions in profit for Sony. For Spider-Man 2, he negotiated $17.5 million plus 5% of the box office gross, a staggering sum that reflected his newfound power. Spider-Man 3 brought $15 million up front, with 7.5% of back-end profits, pushing his total Spider-Man earnings past $45 million before residuals. He purchased luxury real estate, a mansion in Brentwood for $6.9 million. Properties he bought and sold, with the casual confidence of someone who had finally tasted abundance. He drove Tesla's a Model X for $105,000 and a Model S for $95,000, and walked red carpets draped in designer suits. The world saw triumph. The boy who escaped poverty through talent and determination, the embodiment of the American dream. But behind the cameras, the truth was different. The physical toll of playing Spider-Man was destroying his body. The extensive wire work, the stunts, the hours suspended in harnesses, they aggravated an old back injury that had been dormant for years. When he took the role of jockey Red Pollard in Seabiscuit in 2003, the grueling horseback riding pushed his spine past its breaking point. By the time Spider-Man 2 was set to begin production, Tobey was in excruciating pain, facing the terrifying possibility of paralysis if he injured his back further. He sent his neurosurgeon to meet with Sam Raimi and producer Laura Ziskin, explaining that he might not be physically capable of performing the complex stunts required. Sony panicked. They had invested hundreds of millions into the sequel and could not afford delays or uncertainty. They began serious discussions about recasting the role with Jake Gyllenhaal, Kirsten Dunst's boyfriend at the time, lined up as the replacement. Tobey, who would later admit he never understood it had reached that point, went into full damage control. He sought counsel from Ron Meyer, the father of his girlfriend Jennifer Meyer, and vice chairman of NBC Universal. Meyer convinced him to fight for the role, to prove he could handle the physical demands, to not let ego destroy the best thing that ever happened to him. Tobey underwent tests, strapped himself into harnesses, performed sample stunts, while his doctors watched nervously. He passed barely, and Sony relented. But the controversy had damaged his reputation. Whispers circulated that he had used his injury as leverage to demand more money, that he was difficult, that he was a diva. Hollywood, which had celebrated him just months earlier, now looked at him with suspicion. Power, as Tobey Maguire discovered, carries a heartbreaking price. When Tobey Maguire first stepped away from the cameras after Spider-Man 3 in 2007, the industry assumed he would return, triumphant with another blockbuster. But what the cameras captured was retirement from the spotlight. What they could not capture was the storm of addiction, manipulation, and moral compromise brewing beneath the surface. Tobey had developed a passion for poker in 2004, becoming a protege of professional player Daniel Negreanu, and quickly ascending to the highest stakes games in Hollywood. He was not just a hobbyist, he was a shark, cold, calculating, and ruthlessly effective. In 2005, Tobey partnered with television producer Houston Curtis to organize underground poker games featuring the wealthiest celebrities and businessmen in Los Angeles. These were not friendly games among equals. They were engineered traps designed to separate rich amateurs from their money, while Tobey and his inner circle cleaned up. Ben Affleck, Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, the Olsen twins, they all sat at Tobey's table, and most of them lost. Over 4 years, sources estimate Tobey won between $30 and $40 million from these games, more than he earned from some of his films. The stories that emerged from those nights painted a disturbing portrait. Molly Bloom, who organized many of the games before breaking with Tobey, described him as the worst tipper, the best player, and the absolute worst loser. He reportedly once offered her $1,000 to bark like a seal for a fish, and when she refused, he stormed out in rage. He told Molly he didn't actually like poker, that what he enjoyed was destroying people's lives, a confession so chilling it seemed almost unbelievable. When the film Molly's Game was released in 2017, the character Player X, played by Michael Cera, was widely understood to be based on Tobey. The portrayal was devastating, a manipulative bully who loaned money to desperate players just to watch them drown in debt, who took perverse pleasure in psychological cruelty, who exemplified everything toxic about unchecked privilege. The legal consequences arrived with brutal efficiency. Brad Ruderman, a hedge fund manager who frequented Tobey's games, lost approximately $25 million of his investors' money at the poker tables before being exposed as the operator of a Ponzi scheme. When the FBI investigated, they traced some of Ruderman's losses back to Tobey and other players. Investors filed private lawsuits to recoup their money, and Tobey was sued for over $300,000, the largest amount among the defendants, a clear indication that he had won more from Ruderman than anyone else. The scandal was humiliating, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man revealed as a ruthless poker hustler profiting from a fraud victim. Tobey settled quietly, but the damage to his reputation was irreversible. Casting directors who once fought to hire him now hesitated, wondering if the liability outweighed the marquee value. He retreated further from acting, taking only scattered roles in The Great Gatsby in 2013, Pawn Sacrifice in 2014, small parts that kept him relevant but never restored his status. The poker games had given him wealth, but they had stolen something far more valuable, the goodwill of an industry that once adored him. In 2003, while filming Seabiscuit, Tobey met jewelry designer Jennifer Meyer, the daughter of NBC Universal Vice Chairman Ron Meyer. They fell in love with the intensity of two people who believed they had finally found stability in the chaos of Hollywood. They became engaged in 2006, and their daughter Ruby was born in November of that year. They married in 2007 in a private ceremony in Hawaii, and their son Otis arrived in 2009. For a while, it seemed Tobey had built the family he never had as a child, the safe harbor he spent his entire life seeking. But the cracks appeared slowly inevitable as erosion. Tobey's obsession with poker, his increasing reclusiveness, his struggle to reconcile the hungry boy from Santa Monica with the millionaire actor he had become, they created distance that no amount of love could bridge. In 2016, after 9 years of marriage, Tobey and Jennifer announced their separation. The divorce was finalized in 2020, a quiet dissolution of what had once seemed unbreakable. Jennifer would later describe Tobey as her best friend, the best ex-husband a girl could ever have. And during the 2025 Los Angeles wildfires, she and her new fiancé would shelter in Tobey's home, a testament to their enduring respect. But the failure of the marriage was another wound, another reminder that even when you escape poverty, even when you achieve everything you dreamed of, happiness remains elusive. Tobey had built a fortune, but he had not built a home. He had won at poker, but he had lost at life. The boy who learned that his feelings of love, or security, or happiness were all in his own hands, discovered that some things cannot be controlled, no matter how hard you try. In 2026, Tobey Maguire stands not as the triumphant superhero of his youth, but as a man who climbed from poverty to fame and discovered both were prisons. He is 50 years old, a father of two, his back still aching from stunts performed decades ago. His acting career has slowed occasional cameos like Spider-Man No Way Home, reminding audiences of what he once was. He produces through Material Pictures, working behind the scenes where his reputation cannot overshadow the work. His net worth of $75 million includes real estate in Brentwood and West Hollywood investments and residuals from Spider-Man films that still generate revenue. He maintains cordial relations with ex-wife Jennifer Meyer, co-parenting with careful civility. He rarely gives interviews, preferring quiet anonymity. His legacy remains complicated. To one generation, he is Spider-Man, the definitive Peter Parker, whose emotional performance in Sam Raimi's trilogy set the standard. To another, he is Player X, the poker shark who manipulated and exploited. The truth lies between. Tobey Maguire is neither hero nor villain, but a deeply flawed human shaped by trauma and success. He fought to escape homeless shelters and food stamps, losing parts of himself along the way. He achieved the American dream and found it insufficient to heal his wounds. The boy who slept on couches became the man who bought mansions. The child who watched his father imprisoned became the superhero sworn to justice. The teenager who survived on charity became the poker player who won $40 million. And through all these transformations, Tobey Maguire remains unchanged, still convinced his happiness is in his own hands, still believing enough control can outrun the past. But some ghosts cannot be outrun. They follow you into mansions and onto sets and across poker tables, whispering you are still that scared boy waiting to be told you are enough. Tobey Maguire swung from skyscrapers and won millions and built an empire, but could not build a self that felt whole. The man who taught a generation to believe in heroes never learned to believe in himself. He found success, but not peace, wealth, but not home. And as he approaches twilight, living quietly in fame's shadows, Tobey Maguire remains what he always was, a survivor, searching for a victory that trauma will never let him claim.